How's it going, everybody? Hope you're all having an amazing day. In this video, we're going to be talking about the blog post that Old School RuneScape just posted. There is a ton of stuff in this blog post, but I'm going to specifically focus in on what Mod Husky had to say about Old School RuneScape leagues. There's a lot to go over here, so I'm really just going to try and skim through this as fastly as possible. If this video helps you out at all, then help me out by hitting that like button, but let's go ahead and cut this plug and get right into it. So Mod Husky says here that he is going to go through the entire process from defining what a league is and ironing out the design requirements, just to kind of, keep us in the loop of what it takes here to build a leagues. He mentions that we can't talk about the future of leagues just yet, so I'm assuming they're gonna have some leagues for information coming out soon, but kind of with this blog, I'm almost concerned that they don't even have something in the works to pump out a leagues this year. Let me know what you guys think about that down in the comments. If you would be super upset if they did not have a leagues this year. Husky does point out that this entire blog is just one developer's opinion and that it doesn't necessarily represent the views of the rest of the team. But with all of that out of the way, let's kind of jump into what he's trying to get across here. This kind of explains what leagues are, and we already know, what a league is. But as you can see, there are a lot of moving parts involved. You need a compelling rule set, a fun new way to play the game which entices players to spend time in the temporary game mode. You need meta progression, a list of tasks involving common gameplay elements or areas specific to the league that allows players to be ranked against each other. And you need powerful buffs and effects, an example, the relics, which allowed players to be more powerful, faster progression, and rewards. So he spends some time going through each of these different set of requirements for a league right here, and we're going to start off with rule set and skim through it. Again, he just kind of gives us a reminder of what all the other leagues were like, but he does point out that the rule set is the hardest part of the design process. After all, if the leagues doesn't sound fun, nobody will play it. We also have to be careful to design a rule set that is technically feasible with our current game engine. And lastly, they want the rule set to be meaningful for players, not just a cheap gimmick that gets old after a few hours of play. To show you what I mean, here are two examples of rule sets which sound cool on the surface, but have more problems to overcome than meets the eye. First up is the Reverse League, where players start at level 99 and work their way back to level 1. While this sounds fun at first, it fundamentally breaks the core gameplay of unlocking cooler stuff as you progress. Instead, players will find themselves more and more restricted as they play. Realistically, players would just delay the de-leveling mechanic until it was the last thing they had left to complete. A similar concept was the Scrambled League, in which skilling activities were randomized, so a mining activity might give runecrafting experience and vice versa. This sounds like a league that would be incredibly fun to the early and mid game as players figure out the best way to train skills and work their way through tangled web of unlocks to start leveling up efficiently. Once you reach level 30 or 40, however, you'd be much less restricted than it first appears, and you'd just be picking different repetitive activity to grind until 99. While it might sound fun to skip runecrafting, you'd eventually have to do it to level up something else anyways. Neither of these concepts are bad ideas, they just have problems that would take a great deal of time to iron out, and I hope these examples give you some ideas of the potential issues that can arise even at the proposal stage. Arguably, even Shattered Relics fell into this trap where once all the content was unlocked, it felt like you were just playing the main game, Old School RuneScape, with relics and a task system. By contrast, the Twisted and Trailblazer leagues both felt like entirely new game modes that kept up their unique challenge all the way to endgame. Moving on to the task system, he says that he thinks for players, the relics seem like the most appealing and fun part of the league, but the truth is the task system is the part that controls exactly which content is worth your time. It doesn't matter how fun a relic looks if it awards fewer points per hour than the competition. Task systems became a greater focus for the design team moving from Twisted into Trailblazer League. They had a lot of early criticism about there not being enough tasks in the game, with a lot of you asking if we could reward you for training a skill past 99 or participating in long boss grinds. There was also heavy bias towards certain skills which made them feel more rewarding to train, and a huge discrepancy in the difficulty of tasks. During Twisted League, you could get more points for thieving a gem stall than finally getting a brimstone ring from the alchemical Hydra. We also overlooked how easy some of the Twisted League's tasks would be with the increased power levels from the league's XP bonus. which resulted in players knocking out tasks too quickly and being stuck with only a few things left to do. Our goal in Trailblazer, therefore, was to make sure every single skill and area had a comparable number of tasks to complete so that the player could feel rewarded no matter which choices they made. I think this was a significant step up from the Twisted Leagues, but it wasn't as easy to coordinate as it sounds. Firstly, all content zones are not created equally. It made sense for the desert to have its own area, but places like Kandarin and Mortania really outshine the content on offer there. There's just more exciting stuff to do and late game beasties to go after. Remember, this was before we introduced Tombs of Amasket or Temperos, so it really was a desert of content. How did we solve this problem? By artificially inflating the points per hour of the desert region by moving certain tasks up a tier so that players who enjoyed content like Sorcerer's Garden or Mage Training Arena could still unlock relics at a decent pace. We also didn't put as much thought as we should have into the synergy between different areas, which resulted in a higher number of total points available. Choosing the Kandarin and Fremnik areas, for example, resulted in players being able to create dragon kite shields and plate bodies and complete tasks which were significantly harder for those who made different choices. That said, some task sets were so successful that we decided to copy them across to the Shattered Relics League while updating them to be more relevant with the new starting area. We also introduced beginner tasks to speed up early game progress and identify tasks which could be completed by any account regardless of which content they later unlock. Ultimately, however, this led to a very similar gameplay experience to Trailblazer League and a bloated task system. We hadn't considered that Trailblazer was balanced around just 5 areas, whereas in Shattered Relics, players had access to the entire map. Moving on to what he has to say about the relic system. Relics are the thing players are most excited about in a new league. As well as being powerful, fun ways to play the game, they also make difficult content more accessible to people who haven't necessarily experienced it before. Whether it's a one-tick blowpipe, the ability to send resources to the bank, or an insane dopamine hit when you smith a whole inventory of bars at once, with buffs this powerful on the table, how could we possibly mess it up? They say, though, that in fact every single league so far has had new problems with its relic system. In Twisted League, for example, we left some very heavy outliers, particularly in Tier 1. Infinite Run Energy was just so much more impactful than the other options that choosing anything else felt really bad in the mid to late game. Combined with our decision to have a lot of tiers where players had to choose between skilling and combat options, a lot of players regretted their choice of relics and felt that they'd ruined their league experience before they even really got started. With this in mind, they made significant changes to the relic system in Trailblazers. Most players felt there were at least 2 competitive choices of relics at each tier, with only one major outlier everyone agreed was the best option. We also made sure that players couldn't min-max one single aspect of the game by grouping skilling, utility, and combat relics together. More effectively, this resulted in some relic regret, but nowhere near the levels we saw in Twisted League. So basically, he goes over just kind of like all the experience that they've had with the relics and the different relics in the different leagues right now, and how basically in each league, the relics were a problem in some way, shape, or form. They say in hindsight, it's difficult to tell which approach was better, that they've personally heard tons of players prefer one over the other. My personal favorite is the Trailblazer system, as it feels more exciting to excel in some tasks and struggle with others based on the choices you made, but I'm also aware that the relic regret can really ruin the league's experience. Moving on to rewards. Rewards are a great reason for players to participate in leagues, but they're also surprisingly controversial. The most notable reward are the league trophies untradeable rewards, which players can use to show off the ranking they obtained during a league. This kind of reward system compels players to engage with the league and push past the competition, but it can also require intensive, consistent gameplay in order to compete for the top ranks. The pros of this percentage system are that it allows competition to stay active throughout the league and adds a certain prestige to the highest ranked trophies. It also prevents us from setting thresholds that turn out to be too easy to hit, making rewards less prestigious than they should be. However, a big con with this system is how redundant most of it is. Leagues end up having a lot of players that log in for a week or two just to try the game mode and then go back to their main account. This means that it's actually quite easy to get in the top 40 to 60%. To visualize this, here's how many points players are required to get each trophy in the last 3 leagues. I've given this a lot of thought since last league, and I think we should probably go for more of a bell curve approach where we have more meaningful brackets for players to aim for at the top end of the scale instead of there being massive gaps between Mithril, Adamant, and Rune. That is quite a big gap, 6,000 to 18 and 5,000 to 15, and then you double it again and not quite double it again. Assuming we add the same number of tasks next league, we could comfortably set static thresholds for players to make the points for each trophy more transparent while maintaining their prestige. So they're saying, 50,000 for Dragon, 35 for Rune, and it's no longer a top 1% style thing. I'm not really here nor there on that. League duration. While leagues are incredibly fun and exciting, all good things must come to an end. During a league, players may play for longer hours, achieving loads of goals in a short amount of time, only to eventually return to the main game where progress is slower and finding that they're burned out. I feel like this is in part due to the pressure to keep up on your points in order to compete for the higher trophy tiers. As I've mentioned above, having static goals could be the answer to this, but I do think that the length of leagues is also a part of the problem. Currently, leagues have run anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks. That's 2 to 3 months of time investment, which is a lot to dedicate to any game, let alone a temporary game mode. Also, the end game of a league often becomes stale. Tasks take longer and tend to be less exciting, such as grinding for a rare drop or boss kill count, or reaching a high skill threshold. It's just not as fun as the start of the league. My proposal is to instead split the league into 2 competitive and non-competitive periods. The competitive period would last between 4 and 5 weeks and would determine the trophy ranking. Then we'd move into the non-competitive period, which could in theory last indefinitely. This would let players play to their heart's content without forcing them to rush towards the goals, and they'd still be able to earn points to spend on rewards. I feel this change would both appeal to casual and competitive players. So he's basically saying instead of 8 to 10 weeks of the full competitive grind, we do the 4 or 5 week competitive grind and then just let the rest run out on its own. I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's actually like ending it early, ending that competitive grind early, so leagues would be dead after this, unless of course it was going to turn into like a permanent style world, such as like the Dead Man mode World 345. They go behind the scenes here to talk about some code and infrastructure. The biggest limitation for leagues is that all of our game worlds can only have 1 copy of the game's server script at any one time. This means that the code running on normal worlds is the exact same code that's running on the league world. The only difference is that there are lots and lots of checks in the code that tells it which world you're on. Leagues inherently have risks, as changes in the logic can have side effects on non-league worlds as well. This has happened in every league so far. For example, in Trailblazer, we let players produce an entire inventory of resources at once. This required changes to the smelting script, which previously worked on an ore-by-ore basis. Instead, we decided to route all smelting through the same script. Unfortunately, in doing so, we made it so that players couldn't smelt perfect gold ore into a perfect gold bar for the first 6 hours of leagues. Fortunately, it only affected a small number of players. In the not too distant future, they'd like to get a proper beta world to run support. This means that it's actually not at all a simple spin-up of previous leagues and let players have a go at it. While we could easily pull up a backup of the game from when the league was running, we'd have to run it as a separate copy of the code alongside the main game, and even if they managed that, they'd still have to answer some pretty big questions. First being, is a rerun counted as a new league in terms of rewards? How does it work with new content? Should we make any changes to tasks and relics to rebalance the league? Will it be as fun as the original league? In short, it's not as easy as some players think. To try and mitigate these issues, they've at least made the league code modulator so it's capable of executing differently by identifying which league we're playing. Finally, there are risks to rewriting code for leagues. It has brought significant benefits to the main game. It is always a good idea to tidy up code when we can. Sometimes we just need a good excuse. Closing thoughts. So we finally have read through all of that. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about all this. If you agree with him on any of the points that he's making, what you would do to change. Let me know down in the comments if you think a Leagues 4 is coming out. But he says here in his closing thoughts, if you're still reading, I'd like to say thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time. If you scroll down to just get a TLDR, you should have known I don't really do things shorthand. Don't worry, that's why I'm here. I just read it for you. Hopefully 2 times speed this video, get a TLDR in your ear. I don't know. So I'm afraid you'll have to go back and read the whole thing. Leagues really are a passion project of mine and something that I hope to be a part of in the future. And so yeah, you know, I've been perusing the internet trying to look for anything related to the leagues and what we can expect for League 4, and I can't find anything. And honestly, with this post right here, I'm anticipating another delay in leagues, especially because they have the new skill, they have Desert Treasure 2, they've got, what's that, Forestry coming out. They've got a dozen things that they're working on right now. I really genuinely think that Leagues is going to end up getting postponed again, which sucks. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think, but that's all I wanted to go over in this video. Hope you guys all have an amazing day. I'm out.